the prototype that shouldn't have existed. September 10th, 1940. Inglewood, California, September 10th, 1940. The dry wind rolls through the assembly hangar at North American Aviation's plant in Inglewood, California. The world is at war, but for now, America is not. Inside the hangar, a handful of engineers work under fluorescent lights, their shirts damp with sweat and the smell of oil thick in the air. At the center of the room sits a sleek aluminum fuselage, its nose unpainted, its wings still skeletal, a machine that doesn't yet have a name. Standing beside it, 38-year-old Edgar Schmude, a German-born American aircraft designer, squints at a blueprint pinned to a drafting board. A slide rule dangles from his pocket. His accent is faint but unmistakable as he mutters to his team, "If we can give her laminar flow, she'll cut through air like a blade through silk." Schmude isn't supposed to be doing this. Officially, his company, North American Aviation, has been asked by the British Purchasing Commission to produce more Curtiss P-40s, the rugged but aging American fighter already in use with the RAF. But Schmude refuses to copy someone else's design. Instead, he and his boss, Dutch Kindleberger, make a bold promise to the British. "Give us 120 days. We'll build you something better." The RAF agrees, reluctantly. And so, against the clock, a handful of engineers set to work designing an entirely new fighter from scratch. The machine on the floor, still just a prototype, is the result. The NA-73X, a narrow, low-drag aircraft with a bubble canopy and wings shaped like nothing the world has seen before. Its secret lies in the airfoil, a laminar flow wing that Schmude had studied obsessively, reducing drag to levels unheard of in piston aircraft. Combined with a new radiator design that recycles heated air for thrust, it's a daring experiment in aerodynamic efficiency. The problem? It doesn't yet have an engine worthy of it. For now, it's powered by an Allison V1710, a solid but uninspired American inline engine that performs well at low altitudes and gasps for breath above 15,000 feet. When the first prototype takes flight on October 26, 1940, test pilot Vance Breeze climbs into the cockpit and shouts through the open canopy, "Let's see if your miracle wings can fly." The Mustang, though no one knows to call it that yet, leaps from the runway with ease. Sleek, fast, and agile, it handles like a dream. But in the thin air above 20,000 feet, the Allison engine coughs, sputters, and dies. When Breeze lands, he shakes his head. "She's beautiful, Ed," he says, "but she can't breathe." Schmude nods, staring at the aircraft's silver nose. He knows it's not the plane's fault. It's the engine. The wings work, the airframe works, but without power, it's like strapping a thoroughbred to a plow. Still, within months, the British order hundreds. The aircraft, now named Mustang, begins production, a fast, low-level reconnaissance and ground attack plane. It serves, but it doesn't yet shine. It will take another mind and another engine to unlock the design's full potential. And that key would come from across the Atlantic, in a factory that had once armed the enemy Edgar Schmude fled from. The Merlin Marriage. April 1942. Hucknall Aerodrome, Nottinghamshire, England, April 1942. The English countryside trembles with the low thunder of aircraft engines. At Hucknall Aerodrome, north of Nottingham, a group of RAF engineers gathers around an American-built fighter that looks out of place among the Spitfires. Its fuselage gleams silver, its nose long and narrow, the latest version of the North American P-51 Mustang. But today, the British plan to do something bold. Inside the hangar, A tall, mustached engineer from Rolls-Royce named Ronald Harker flips through a stack of notes. He's seen the Mustang in flight, and he's puzzled. It handles superbly, faster and smoother than anything the Americans have sent over. But its Allison engine gasps for power above 15,000 feet. To Harker, the solution seems obvious, even heretical. Put a Merlin in it, he says simply. The Rolls-Royce Merlin 61, the same engine that powers the latest Spitfire Mach-9, is a supercharged, high-altitude monster. Its dual-stage, two-speed compressor can breathe freely where the Allison suffocates. Still, few believe it will work. The Mustang's narrow fuselage, its American systems, its different cooling setup, everything about it screams incompatible. But Harker insists. The airframe's perfect, he tells his superiors. It's the best aerodynamic platform I've seen. Give it the Merlin, and it will outrun anything in the sky. And so, quietly, a handful of engineers at Rolls-Royce and the Air Fighting Development Unit begin the experiment. They pull the Allison engine out of a P-51's nose and replace it with a 1,650 horsepower Merlin 61. The exhaust stacks are rerouted, the cowling reshaped. It takes weeks of trial and error, the kind of painstaking, sleepless work that defines wartime innovation. Finally, on October 13, 1942, test pilot Ronald Shepard straps into the prototype. Rain streaks across the canopy as he opens the throttle. The Merlin roars to life, a deeper, throatier growl than the Allison ever made. The Mustang surges forward, its wheels lifting from the runway like it's been waiting to be free. At 20,000 feet, the difference is immediate. The engine doesn't choke, it howls. The speedometer climbs past 400 mph, then keeps climbing. The climb rate doubles. At 30,000 feet, the Mustang is still accelerating. When Shepard lands, he climbs down from the cockpit, wind-blown and grinning like a man who's seen the future. "She's a bloody Spitfire with legs," he says. "And faster." Word spreads quickly. Rolls-Royce builds several more prototypes, designating them Mustang MKX. Reports are sent to the U.S. Army Air Forces, who are skeptical at first. The Americans are busy producing Thunderbolts and Lightnings. They have no time for a British experiment. But one man pays attention. Major Thomas Hitchcock, the U.S. military attaché in London and a former World War I pilot. He flies one of the converted Mustangs himself and cables Washington with urgency. This aircraft, properly powered, is the long-range escort we've been looking for. The Merlin Mustang is superior to any Allied fighter now in production. In America, engineers at North American and Packard, the Detroit automaker licensed to build the Merlin under contract, take note. Within months, Packard begins producing the V1650-7, an American-built version of the British Merlin, refined for mass production. They marry it to the Mustang airframe. The result? The P-51B, a machine that changes the war. At Wright Field, test pilot Bob Chilton takes one of the first Merlin-powered Mustangs up in December 1942. He calls down over the radio, climbing through 30,000, still pulling hard. Jesus, she just won't quit. The engineers below cheer. One of them, watching the contrails stretch into the cold Ohio sky, murmurs, "The British built the heart, the Americans built the body." And together, they made a killer. The P-51 Mustang is reborn, no longer a low-level scout, but a high-altitude thoroughbred capable of escorting bombers deep into enemy territory. No one knows it yet, but this fusion of British genius and American audacity will rewrite the rules of air war. and spell the death of the Luftwaffe's last hope. The sky belongs to the Mustang. February 1944, over Germany, February 20th, 1944. 25,000 feet above Germany. The sky is a cold, glittering sea of silver. A formation of B-17 flying fortresses stretches from horizon to horizon. Hundreds of bombers lumbering toward their targets in Leipzig. Below them, contrails twist in the freezing wind, broken only by flashes of flak bursting like black blossoms. Over the intercom, the lead pilot's voice crackles through static. "Flak's getting heavier. Keep tight, boys. Fighters will be here any minute." For months, these bomber crews had learned to fear this stretch of sky. Deep inside the Reich, beyond the range of their escorts. The Luftwaffe's FW-190s and Bf-109s had shredded unescorted bombers by the dozens. It was called Black Thursday for a reason. But today, something's different. Far above and behind, dark silhouettes appear against the sun. Fast, graceful, their long noses glinting silver. Then, with a howl of power, they dive. "Jesus Christ," a gunner whispers. It's the new ones, Mustangs. The P-51B Mustangs, powered by Packard-built Merlin engines, have arrived. Their leader, Major James Howard of the 300 4th Fighter Group, rolls his Mustang inverted and dives straight into a swarm of German interceptors. The engine's deep growl becomes a scream as he picks up speed. 450, 470, 490 miles per hour. Faster than any fighter in Europe. He fires a burst from his 50 caliber Brownings, and a Messerschmitt 109 dice explodes in a bloom of flame. Another peels away, chased by Howard's wingman. The Germans can't believe what they're seeing. The Americans have never followed this far inland before. Their Thunderbolts and Lightnings simply didn't have the range. But the Mustangs can go anywhere. Thanks to their efficient design and drop tanks, they can escort bombers from England to Berlin, over 1,500 miles round trip, and still fight. The Luftwaffe's advantage, built on striking the bombers unprotected, is gone overnight. From the radio of a downed Bf-109 pilot, intercepted later, German intelligence hears disbelief. They were everywhere. They were faster at altitude. They climbed like rockets. It's impossible. For the Germans, it was impossible, until it wasn't. The Mustang's Merlin engine gives it power where German fighters suffocate. At 30,000 feet, it still climbs effortlessly, its supercharger screaming. In tight turns, it dances, rolling faster than the FW-190. And in a dive, it's untouchable. Its laminar wings slicing through the air clean as a knife through ice. By March 1944, the effect is devastating. The Luftwaffe, already stretched thin by fuel shortages and Allied bombing, begins to crumble. For the first time, Allied bombers strike Berlin under continuous fighter cover. From their command bunkers, German officers read intelligence reports in silence. New American fighter, high speed, great range, outperforms Messerschmitt at all altitudes. One general simply mutters, "If they can escort to Berlin, we've lost the war in the air." Back at their bases in England, the P-51 pilots return to fields littered with mud and ice. Ground crews swarm their planes, refueling and rearming. The Mustang's fuselages are pockmarked with bullet holes, their silver paint scorched and darkened from exhaust. Inside one briefing hut, a young pilot wipes sweat from his face, still trembling with adrenaline. "They came right at us," he says. "I don't think they expected us to be there. Not that high, not that fast." His commander grins. "They'll expect it next time. he says, doesn't mean they can stop it. By the summer of 1944, the numbers speak for themselves. The Luftwaffe loses thousands of aircraft. Bomber survival rates double. The skies over Europe, once a death trap for Allied airmen, belong to the Mustang now. And high above the burning fields of Germany, the P-51 roars through the contrails, its Merlin engine singing the sound of victory. A sound equal parts British precision and American audacity. The engineer's legacy. Spring 1945, Inglewood, California. Berlin, Germany. Spring 1945. The war in Europe is nearly over. Berlin smolders under a sky once ruled by the Luftwaffe. The Reich's last airfields lie littered with wrecked Bf-109s, their wings torn, their propellers bent. Above the ruins, Allied aircraft roam freely, and the one every German soldier now recognizes by silhouette is the Mustang. Its long fuselage, its graceful, gull-like wings, the distinct, whining hum of its Merlin engine. To German eyes, it has become a symbol of inevitability. Sleek, silver death, cutting across a sky they no longer control. On April 7th, 1945, over northern Germany, a Luftwaffe officer radios a final warning to his comrades. Achtung! Mustangs über Bremen. Hundreds of them. There's panic in his voice and resignation. The once proud German fighter force is gone, destroyed not just by numbers, but by range, by altitude, by precision. The P-51 had closed every gap the Reich depended on. Its pilots can hunt Messerschmitts before they ever reach the bombers. Its tanks can carry them to targets once considered unreachable. And its engine, that perfect symphony of British and American engineering, hums flawlessly from takeoff to touchdown. Across the ocean, at North American Aviation's plant in Inglewood, California, the assembly lines run at full tilt. Women riveters in denim coveralls and men fresh out of college turn wrenches and check gauges under the roar of overhead cranes. In one corner, an older man walks the catwalk above the plant floor, hands clasped behind his back, expression calm and unreadable. It's Edgar Schmood, the man who dreamed the Mustang into being 5 years earlier. He watches as another P-51D, the definitive model, rolls off the line. This one bears a polished spinner and 6 .50 caliber Brownings gleaming in the sunlight. Its cockpit canopy, clear and bubble-like, offers pilots an unobstructed 360-degree view. On the side, in black stencil, the words are painted. North American Aviation, Model P-51D, Engine, Packard Merlin, V1650-7. The hum of the test bay fills the hangar as the new engine ignites. Schmood closes his eyes for a moment, listening. The sound is clean, balanced, powerful without strain. It's the voice of his creation, perfected. Nearby, a journalist from Life magazine interviews one of the plant foremen. "You ever think this thing changed the war?" The foreman just grins. "Hell, mister, we heard it change. You could tell when the Mustangs got to Germany, because our boys started coming home." Meanwhile, in Europe, the pilots who flew them become legends. Major George Preddy, Bud Anderson, Chuck Yeager. Names that would echo for decades. Their Mustangs, with nose art reading Old Crow, Detroit Miss, Glamorous Glen, and Cripes a Mighty, are etched into the mythology of victory. They talk about the plane with reverence. "She'd climb with angels," Anderson would say later. "At full throttle, she'd outdive a Messerschmitt and come out smiling." But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from the enemy itself. Captured Luftwaffe ace Adolf Galland, one of Germany's top fighter commanders, was shown photos of the Mustang after the war. He stared at them for a moment, then said quietly, When I saw Mustangs over Berlin, I knew the war was lost. The Mustang's success wasn't just in its kills or its speed. It was what it represented. The marriage of necessity and imagination, of two nations' best ideas fused into one perfect machine. By war's end, over 15,000 Mustangs had been built. They escorted bombers to the heart of the Reich, strafed trains in France, and even fought over Korea years later. But their real victory was in the skies of 1944, when for the first time, the Allies truly owned the air. As the final aircraft leaves the Inglewood hangar, Schmood stands at the edge of the runway. The Mustang lifts gracefully into the blue California sky, its silver wings flashing in the sunlight before disappearing into the distance. He smiles faintly and murmurs to himself in his old Bavarian accent, "Not bad for a dream they said was impossible." That day, another Mustang joins the endless horizon, a machine born of two worlds, carrying the sound of freedom in its engine song.